In this little demonstration, we are going to configure the screen capture protection for Azure Virtual Desktop. To get started, the screen capture protection for Azure Virtual Desktop is managed on the session host level. Therefore, you need to enable this using group policy, as your session hosts are domain joined. So here we are. I have opened up my group policy management console on a domain controller, and I have created an Azure Virtual Desktop session host policy, and I've bound that to my WVD infra organizational unit where I am storing my session hosts. So what we can do is we can take the group policy object and make changes to it. We can edit the group policy object. And then from here, we can now go in and dive into the policy. And in order to make changes, we need to be in the computer configuration. We need to be in the administrative templates, in Windows components. And in here, if we scroll further down, as part of Windows components, we can see a folder for the remote desktop services. Then in remote desktop session host, we can open up the Azure Virtual Desktop environment. Here you will notice that there is an enable screen protection or screen capture protection setting for Azure Virtual Desktop. I want to open up the setting, and here we can see that there is an explanation on what it does. We can enable the setting. And we have an option to say we are going to block the screen capture on the client, but we can also block screen capture on both the client and the server. So if you enable this policy setting to block screen capture on the client and the server, it will block on the client as described here above, which is from the client side. And it will protect capturing the screen if you are connecting to the server itself. So like this, I'm going to choose block screen capture on client, click apply, and this is enough to enable this policy for your session hosts. Now, an important thing to do is that you will also want to make sure that your session hosts will do a GP update or a reboot in order for this setting to be applied. Another setting that you might like to think of is enable watermarking, where if you enable the watermarking, you can enable this. And what it will do is it will create a QR code that will be shown all the way down inside the remote desktop session. As long as you do this, it will tell you a little bit about the connection. So if, for example, pictures are being taken off the screen, it will always show the watermark. And if you can see these pictures popping up online, scanning the QR code, you know who was doing the capture of the screen with a picture. So this is also a policy that you might like to deploy in order to make sure that people are not stealing data from your environment. This is what we can do using the screen capture protection inside your session hosts in Azure Virtual Desktop. So now that we have configured the screen capture disability and the QR code to display session information, let's see what it does if we check this out from the client. So here we are at my client. I can try and sign in to a session desktop for a user, and user one is signing in, and as you can see here, little QR codes are being shown. If you would take a picture of this and follow the link, you get information about the session ID of the current user. Another thing, if we also have enabled screen capture, and what we want to do here is make sure that the screen capture disability was applied. So on my client, we could, for example, use the snipping tool. And if I click the new snip button here, you will notice that the content of my remote desktop session is going to be blacked out. So I'm going to click New. Now, if I want to create a snip of my screen, you will notice that everything inside the VM, inside the remote desktop session here is going to be blacked. So that means that we are not able to create screenshots of whatever is happening inside that remote desktop session. Just like that. This is exactly what we wanted to be achieving when working with the screen capture protection. Also, this is the result of what we can do with that little QR code or watermarking of our environment.